Hello and welcome to Train Signal. You are watching Localization and System Time. When I first started using computers, I never paid much attention to the system time. But when I began my IT career, I started to see the importance of this often overlooked setting. Think of a legal organization that runs a business dependent upon billable hours. In this field, it's important to know when an associate may have begun and completed work on a particular project, and in fact, for many projects. This information will be key in determining revenues. And what about global mantics? With a team of developers working on an application at any given time, it's important to know the time that the last change was made so that newer program files aren't accidentally overwritten. And these are just a couple of examples. We could also talk about the banking, medical, and even law enforcement areas that all rely heavily on having the correct time and location information. So in this lesson, we'll talk about how Linux handles time zone settings and locale information that tells us where in the country or world someone sits. Then we'll move on to how Linux manages the system time and how the network time protocol is used to ensure that your network always has the most accurate time. Let's begin our lesson with time zone settings on the next slide. Linux uses UTC time, which is the time in Greenwich, England, uncorrected for daylight savings time. To translate between UTC and your actual local time, Linux uses the etc local time file. To view the current date and time, you simply use the date command with no options. So Global Mantics has decided to set up an office in New York, and one brave employee is going to go it alone there for a few months. She needs to reset the time zone on her computer from Central Time to Eastern. Note that Eastern would apply to any state that uses Eastern Time, from Ohio to Florida to Maine. To change the time zone, you view the option in User, Share, Zone Info, and pick the one that best applies. Then you delete any existing local time file on your computer, usually in the etc directory. Then you create a symbolic link from the appropriate region option to a new local time file. And you can verify your results again with the date command. As you may have guessed, there are also more automated command line tools that help you with setting your time zone. tzSelect will ask the user for the location and then send that time zone to standard output, whereas tzConfig will ask for the same information but will attempt to set the time zone for you. Let's fire up a terminal window and give this a try. From Applications, click on System Tools and Terminal. Now we're going to need root privileges, so let's do that first. SU for switch user, and enter your password. Now let's see if we have a local time file already, which we should. Let's type in ls etc local time. And we see that we do indeed have a local time file there. So let's go ahead and delete that. You recall the rm command is used to delete a file. So we're going to delete local time. So we have rm space etc local time. And then we hit enter. Say yes. Now let's see what options we have in our zone info directory. Let's type in ls space user share zone info and hit enter. We can see a list of countries here. We've got America, got some others, and oddly enough we also have US. Let's try taking a look in America. Choose our up arrow, bring the last command back up, and we're going to add in America at the end so we can view the contents of that directory. And hit enter. And from this list it will list cities in all of America, and that's north and south. And you can see here we have New York. And we've got plenty others in alphabetical order. And since our Global Mantics employee is going to New York, we're going to create a new local time file. And we do so again by creating a symbolic link. So let's type in ln-s, that's the command to create a symbolic link. Then we're just going to put in the path, user, share, zone info, America, and we have new underscore York. And hit enter. Okay, let's go ahead and minimize the terminal to get that out of the way. And since I don't really sit in New York, let's change the setting back to the original. And I'm going to show you a little trick, much easier than the method that we just used. From the main menu, click on System, then Administration, followed by Date and Time. You have to enter your admin password. And from here, you can not only change the date and time, and you can synchronize the time as well over the network, which we'll talk about shortly. But if you click on the Time Zone tab here, you can use the scroll bar to go up and down and change the setting to anything you like. I want to change it back to Pacific time, so you click on it and just hit OK. If we wanted to change it to something else, we would just go back to System, Administration, Date and Time, go back to Time Zone, and you can change the setting that way. Let's try one more time. System, Administration, file that we're going to call fscript.conv.txt. So again, we have the name of the program, ICONV. We have the source encoding, which is ASCII and indicated by -F. We have the destination encoding, UTF-8, as indicated with the -T option. We've got the name of the original file, the output redirection character, and then the name of the new file that we want to create. And then let's hit enter. Now let's type in ls again. And we should see our newly created file, fscript.conv.txt. Now there is no real easy way to verify the encoding type. Some have used the file command or file followed by the document name successfully, and there are some other utilities that I believe may do this as well. But this isn't something that you'll have to worry about for certification purposes. In our lesson on job scheduling, we discovered that cron, anachron, and at are totally reliant upon the system time in order to execute their programs. There are two clocks: the hardware clock, which maintains computer time even when the system is powered off. Then you have the software clock, which is set from the hardware clock when the system boots up. And the software clock is the one Linux relies on to run its programs. When computers weren't networked, or even when they were constrained to one city or even one room, using local time was adequate. However, today's networks are much larger, stretching across city, state, and country borders. And because of this, Linux uses UTC time. Still, each system needs to correctly understand its own time zone. When you type in ls-l, Linux reads the timestamp in UTC and then adds or subtracts the appropriate amount of time to calculate and show your local time. Normally, your local time zone is set during installation, but if for some reason you need to change it, administrators need to understand how to do so. To manually set the software clock, you use the date command, and the syntax is simply date, followed by -u, ~UTC, or ~universal to indicate UTC time, or typically you just use the format month, date, hours, minutes, year, .seconds, where there's 2 characters each for month, date, hours and minutes, and year, but there's also the option for 4 characters for the year. Typing in date with no options will display the current date. Passing a time sets the software clock in a 24-hour format. So December 1st, 2010 at 10 a.m. would look like date space 12 for the month, 01 for the day, 1000 for the time of 10 a.m., followed by 10 for a 2-character year. Let's open a terminal window and take a look at our current software clock settings. Okay, so I've already cleared the window with the clear command. Now let's type in date and hit enter. And we see the current date is Monday, October 18th at 9:07. Now let's use the date command to set the system clock by typing in date space. I'm going to do 12 using the example that was on our presentation. We're going to do 12/01 for the date, December 1st. Then we're going to do 1000 for the time of 10 o'clock. And then we're going to put in a trailing 10 for the year. So again, we've got 12 for the month of December, 01 for the first date, 1000 for 10 o'clock a.m., and then we've got 10 for the year of 2010. And again, optionally, you could put in 20 in front of the 10 for 4-character year. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And as you see, we got an error. And this error tells us that in order to perform this operation, we need root privileges. So let's go ahead and type in SU for switch user and type in our password. Hit enter. Now let's try the command again. Type in date space 12 for the month, 01 for the day, 1000 for the time of 10 o'clock, followed by 10 for the year, and hit enter. And now we see that the date has indeed been changed to December 1st at 10 o'clock, the year 2010. Now let's go back to the presentation and take a look at how to set the hardware clock on the next slide. To set the hardware clock, you use the command hwclock followed by options. And the options are -R or "show," which displays the hardware clock. Then you've got "set" and "date equals new date," which are both used to set the hardware clock. You've got "SYSTOHC," which sets the hardware clock to the software clock, and conversely you have "HCTOSYS," which sets the software clock to the hardware clock. And finally, "UTC" treats the hardware clock as storing UTC time. Let's head back to our terminal window and take a look at the hwclock command. Okay, you should still have root privileges, so let's start out by typing in hwclock --R, which should display our current hardware clock setting. And hit enter. And we see the current time and setting. If we wanted to set the software clock to the hardware clock, we would type in hwclock space, the option is HCT0SYS, and hit enter. And again, you probably won't notice much of a change. We can just type in hwclock space -R to view the setting again. Okay, let's move on and talk about network time protocol. I remember a common occurrence on my older computers was that gradually the time would get out of sync. Now, I could easily reset it, and back then it was little more than an annoyance. But in enterprise situations where file timestamps, cron jobs, statistical, and other time-sensitive information is critical, maintaining a correct system time is imperative. To help maintain network time, there is the network time protocol. Think of it as a pyramid, with the best clocks at the top of the chain or at stratum 0. At this level sits things like atomic clocks. I hope after this lesson you have a better understanding of just how important it is to ensure that not only your system time, but your location information is properly configured. In this lesson, we learned that Linux time zone settings can be set at both the command line and graphically. Then we talked about locales and how we can change settings to match your users' locations. Next, we covered the two types of Linux system time, hardware and software. And finally, we covered network time protocol configuration, which allows us to sync our network time to outside time servers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.